everybody. This is Simon Middle. I hope you're doing great today. This is another brain chemistry discussion. I wanted to talk a little bit about a hormone that you may or may not be familiar with called GABA. It stands for gamma aminobutyric acid. Big fancy name. Don't worry about it. But it's really an important chemical that impacts our brain for mental well-being and also for the idea of wellness and the sense of wellness. And so we think about it in lots of different ways. And it's a hormone that has actually been gaining a lot of attention recently. It helps regulate and neural activity, can promote a sense of calm and relaxation, and has some really key impacts on the brain. So the first impact I want to talk about is anxiety and stress regulation. I know we all experience anxiety, we all experience stress, and so we want to understand how can we help kind of manage that. And what GABA does, it actually counterbalances neurotransmitters like glutamate, and glutamate actually increases firing between the neurons that leads to that anxiety. And so when we inhibit it and dampen that excess neural activity, it can actually lead to a reduction in anxiety and stress. So that's number one. Number two, as you might imagine, hearing what we just talked about, it also leads to calmness and relaxation. And so when we quiet down our neurons using GABA, it actually reduces some of that mental chatter and gives us a sense of tranquility. So think about that. How many of those voices keep chattering in your brain? And sometimes if we can get our GABA neurons firing, it can actually help quiet that down. So the third thing it can do is really promote good sleep. And this does this by, again, inducing that relaxation. And that's essential for falling asleep and staying asleep. And I'll be doing another video on sleep hygiene and how important that is. But having our hormones and neurochemicals in the right place are really important to do that. We know that GABA plays a critical role in preventing seizures. So if you're prone to seizures or if you have a family history of seizures, again, understanding how GABA works is important. It helps reduce anxiety, depression, but also is a mood regulator. So it gives us a positive impact on mood stability. So remember those kind of ups and downs that sometimes we all experience. It can really help with that. It can actually also influence our perception of pain. And so when we have perception of pain, sometimes it's real, sometimes it's not. And so we want to kind of be able to recognize that and be able to say, okay, I have a full awareness of what's really causing me pain. So I can reduce that perception of pain in ways that allows us to actually be much more aware. And the reason it does that is because GABA also helps us maintain a balanced level of neurons activity, which is essential for good cognitive function, but it also helps improve our focus and attention. Now, I have ADD, and so for me, kind of being aware of my GABA can be really important in helping me stay focused. So what can I do about that? It's all around mindfulness work. It's all around good, healthy diets. It's around good exercise. Those kinds of things can actually play a big role. And that's why they play a big role, is by really impacting GABA in our brains. One of the most amazing parts of GABA is that it helps us understand our adaptability in the brain. And so we use this term called neuroplasticity. And neuroplasticity is the brain's ability to adapt, reorganize, and it can really affect learning and memory. So when we think about when we're trying to learn new things, sometimes that can be difficult. And part of the reason might be because we have low levels of GABA, which then don't allow our brain to adapt in the ways we want to. Now, one of the things we need to keep in mind is that alcohol and other sedatives can actually impact GABA. And when we enhance that, it releases those things to feel relaxed or sedated or sometimes sleepy. So you can imagine, think about when maybe you had some alcohol or maybe you're on a sedative medication. The reason you feel what you feel, that sense of relaxation and sedation, is because of that increased activity of GABA. Now, we don't need those things to increase our GABA activity. We have other ways of doing that. Again, that can be really helpful. And so when we think about all of these different pieces, we know that balancing out GABA is really important. And it really impacts us both at a neurologic and also at a psychiatric level. And so we want to be aware of it, and then we want to kind of recognize what can we do about it. Well, first of all, we know that a balanced diet, regular exercise, and good sleep have a really particularly impactful role in balancing out GABA. Other things we can do are in our diet. So sometimes fermented foods like yogurt, sauerkraut, kimchi, those kinds of things that contain probiotics can potentially influence our GABA production in our gut. Now, again, remember we talked about in a previous video that we have a really significant neurologic system in our gut, which is connected to our brain. So if we can balance out GABA in our gut, it actually helps relax it and allows it to function much more effectively. We know that whole grains can also be really important in how we produce GABA. Now, GABA is produced from a precursor called tryptophan. And tryptophan is also important in the production of serotonin as well as supporting GABA production. So when we eat complex carbohydrates, it stimulates insulin. Insulin increases the availability of tryptophan, which then leads to serotonin and then supports the production of GABA. Really not important how, but what I am saying is complex carbohydrates are really important. Now, why complex carbohydrates versus other types of carbohydrates? The reason is because we get these big shoots of sugar. And when we get that sugar high, it actually leads our cells to become more resistant to insulin over time. So we actually reduce our GABA production and serotonin production over time as a result of having high sugar foods. So that's why we're really looking at these complex carbohydrates. We know that leafy greens, especially like spinach, kale, broccoli, are really high in magnesium, and that mineral is really important in how GABA works at the receptors in the neurons. So you actually need magnesium to actually partner with the GABA to actually impact the function in the neuron. Nuts and seeds are important. We know that they are good source of glutamate, which again is a precursor to GABA, and that conversion is complex and influenced by lots of factors, but we know having that glutamate can be important. Bananas contain B6, which is important in the synthesis of GABA. We know fish has a lot of good fats, especially omega-3 fatty acids, and that has been linked to improvements in mood and brain health and may indirectly support GABA function. Beans and lentils and legumes are, again, a complex carbohydrate. They have a lot of protein, and they actually support stable blood sugar levels, which again regulates how insulin is produced and then make sure we don't get that insulin resistance. And then there are certain types of teas. Green tea and black tea specifically contain an amino acid called L-theanine, and this has been shown to promote relaxation and support GABA function. So again, we have foods, we have exercise, we have things that we can do to truly impact our wellness. So when we talk about healthy diets and we talk about how we do this, we sometimes get really lost in, well, everybody talks about diet, everybody talks about exercise, and you're right. And the reason is because it has so many amazing impacts. So I want you to really think about that. I want you to think about what's going on in your diet. If you're having a lot of mood instability, really lots of highs and lows, or you're really feeling that anxiety, depression, as we've talked about before, dopamine's important, serotonin's important, and now GABA is important. So again, I hope this is helpful. Please comment. Please give me your questions. I'd love to be able to communicate with you in our community, but also know that we have videos on YouTube. We do have our community called Empowering Minds that you guys are part of, I hope, are part of this. And we're excited to continue to grow our understanding and knowledge of what we can do in our own journey of wellness. Have a great day, and we'll talk soon. Bye-bye.